Great to have you back, and I want to thank NAFA for continuing to put on these micro learning sessions, and I appreciate your commitment to wanting to grow personally and professionally, wanting to grow your business, and whatever it may be while you're motivated to come. But I really enjoy doing these, and I'm glad you're back. So we're going to talk about reciprocity today, and one of the things I just want to give you some brief background about my philosophy, because one of the reasons I started Mindset Go is because I'm trying to shift the way people think about outcomes. And, a lot of times in life, we decide if we're successful or if we failed based on the outcome. And I don't really believe in that, because a blind squirrel can find a nut eventually. And I think we have to identify, especially in sales, I think you have to identify the habits that you have and the processes that you use that work most effectively and yield the greatest results. And I think when you deal with prospects, when you have conversations with people, and when you're in sales situations, the more confident you are in your process, the more likely you are to achieve the outcome. And by the way, one other quick thought on this, that doesn't mean you're not open to learning and understanding how you could be better. It just means you need to have a template to understand what consistently works and what consistently doesn't, because otherwise you're going to be second guessing yourself constantly. So what I'd like you to do today is, if you're taking notes, or even if you weren't going to take notes, if you'd be open to it, I want you to have a goal to have 3 takeaways today. This is 30 minutes. So when you come to a micro learn like this, what are your expectations? What can you learn in 30 minutes? And I want you to write down numbers 1, 2, and 3 on a piece of paper and see if you can come up with 3 takeaways by the end of today that you feel like you can apply and implement into your learning process. What we're going to cover today, just so you have a general idea, is how to motivate people to make referrals for you, how to generate leads and create warm calls, how to identify expectations around asking and receiving for favors, and reframing obligations. Because a lot of times when it comes to reciprocity, if people feel obligated to do something, they'll either avoid it or will choose not to do it if it feels like an expectation or an obligation. So with that said, we're off to the races. So I would love it if you all would chime in here, and chat with me for a moment. Can everybody just type in the chat box 1 or 2 words that come to your head when you think of the word reciprocity? Vincent says give and take, good one. Anybody else? So does anybody have a thought on why reciprocity is difficult for people? Because I agree with Vincent, it is a give and take, and you can see my slide. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That's the underlying definition of reciprocity. So I want you to think about it in simple terms. Yeah, Josh, good call. Give back equal to what you get. That's a really good one. So I want you to think about this in simple terms. When you want to have a conversation with a prospect, okay, you are talking to that prospect, and that's where reciprocity starts. You're hoping, right, that in return for them being willing to listen to you, you're going to educate them, enlighten them on what you know about wealth management, financial planning, insurance, whatever particular industry you're in. The trade-off is, please listen to me, and in return for listening to me, I'm going to enlighten you with this information. And let's face it, if you did a good enough job, in most cases, they'll do business with you because you reciprocated by making their time worthwhile and educating them on why it's worth doing business with you. And that's where reciprocity starts there. Before we talk about networking or referral partners, there's an implied reciprocity every time you sit down with a prospect. And let's face it, you don't actually talk about it. It's just assumed if they're willing to talk with you, then in return, you're going to give them some knowledge and perhaps a better solution than what they have now. So can anybody think of an example where you've used reciprocity in this year, in 2020? Can anybody think of an example where you've used reciprocity? And if so, what was it? So reciprocity, I want to give you guys a point of reference so you can understand today. And I have this slide up, the candy dish, because there have been multiple studies done that when you go to a restaurant and the waiter or waitress puts the bill on the table and they put a piece of sucking candy on the bill, statistically the tips are markedly higher, because by putting that piece of candy on the bill, you subconsciously feel obligated to do something, reciprocate in return, and leave a higher tip. So the message I'm trying to give you here is, you often hear about, when you talk about networking, you often hear about making deposits before taking withdrawals, or giving before you get, right? But the question is, this is when reciprocity is at its finest, when you initiate the reciprocity, right? This is why a lot of people in business will offer free consults, or free evaluations, because that is initiating reciprocity. I will sit down with you. I will learn more about you. I will give you some feedback and recommendations based on what I learned in that conversation. That is initiating reciprocity. And the first thing I want you to think of when you leave today is, how do you initiate reciprocity? What is it that you do as part of your sales or networking process that creates an opportunity for you to give something before you get something? And the bigger question you need to ask yourself is if you are giving something before you're getting it, is it something that people want? And the reason why I say that is because a lot of times, first of all, when you use the word free, right, a lot of people tune out the word free, and free often diminishes value of something. So I try to actually now avoid using the word free. I might use the word complimentary, but I really don't like using the word free because it diminishes the value. So the question is, again, if you are indeed doing something, is it something that the customer really wants? Or are you doing it because that's what everybody else is doing and it seems like the obvious thing to do? So that's the takeaway on this. Now, let me just go here. All right. So one of the things that's tricky about reciprocity are the types of favors you can ask from someone. So a lot of times, think about in your personal or professional life, that if someone was to ask you for a favor, your likely inclination to accept it is going to be based on how big of a favor it is. And in the era we live in the professional business world, most of the criteria that is used is time. So if it's a favor that's not going to take a lot of your time, then you're more likely to do it. And that's probably your gateway to understanding whether you're going to do the favor. So going back to what I just said a moment ago, when you're thinking about reciprocity, if you're going to do something for someone else, how long is that going to take you? If you're asking someone to do something for you, right, how long is it going to take them? Because that could be a major factor in determining whether they do that favor. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and this is a part of reciprocity that people don't often think of. So let me pull these up for a second. So I want to talk about the things that get in the way of you asking for a favor. We're not talking about getting a favor done for you. We're not talking about one of your clients making a referral. We're not talking about someone in your network or a channel partner making a referral. We're talking about why you struggle. And there's a handful of reasons people really struggle, especially in the financial and insurance industry, to get referrals, especially from clients. One of them is we don't want to ask customers for referrals because we feel like we're kind of grateful that they're customers, and we don't want to be pushy and come across as, thanks for being a customer. And by the way, do you know anybody? And so a lot of the clients that I coach, I give them a process. That's not how I would advocate that they do it, but that is a problem when people are nervous to ask the customers to be willing to make referrals. A second aspect is being rejected and people saying, no, I don't have anybody for you, or I can't think of anybody for you. That's not fun. Another reason that's really important is when people have done favors for us, we assume they will know to actually reciprocate. And I think everybody on the call can attest to the fact that at one point or another in your career, you have done favors or made referrals for people and they have not reciprocated. And one of the points I make to people is, and this is something I really encourage you to think about. If you have people in your network right now that you know you have done favors for, and they have not done favors back for you, then why don't you call them up and ask? Because most people just tend to pout or become frustrated and say, well, you know, I made a referral to that person 3 months ago and they haven't offered to do anything for me, or they haven't reached out to me. Well, if I was to talk to every single person that hasn't reciprocated back to you, my guess is 80 to 90% of the time, that wouldn't be a malicious act that they're trying to stiff you or shortchange you. My guess is they got busy and started and are focused on themselves and their own business and just aren't thinking of you right now. So I encourage you to identify the people who you've done favors for that haven't reciprocated and give them a call simply to say, hey, you know, I'm touching base. I was wondering that referral I made so many months ago, how did that turn out? Or how did that play out? Did they end up being a customer? How's it going? So on and so forth. And then after you talk through that and catch up with them, you can say, listen, I was wondering if you had any opportunities for me. Like, this is assertiveness 101. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you want someone to do something for you, you have to ask. And in this case, you had done something for them, so you have every right to ask. So that's something I want you to think about. And so the other reasons are, look, we ask people to do favors for us, and we often get disappointed that the deed isn't returned. We ask people to do favors, they say they will, and then they don't. And then we don't want to be a nag. So if I call up Josh O'Gara and I say, hey, Josh, you know, any chance you can think about people that you can make referrals for? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, great. Sure, I'd be happy to. But then he never gets back to me. Well, that doesn't feel good, right? So now I did ask, and now I have to be put in a position to nag, and no one wants to be put in a position to nag. But what I want you to think about is understand that one of the biggest elements of reciprocity in business is you getting over your fears, your obstacles to make the ask. Because frankly, that's just as much of a problem for many people as it is getting other people to do it for you. Okay, so that's that. Now, let's talk about the reverse. Let's talk about why often people want to make referrals to you. They'll say they're going to make referrals to you, but why they don't. And one of the reasons I'm going through both sides of this is because I'm asking you guys to identify, if you agree these are obstacles for you and for them, you have to address those obstacles. And I'll give you a perfect example so you know what I'm talking about. So here's why people may not make referrals to you. They may not trust you. They may think you're a great person, but they haven't done business with you before. And they may not be confident you will treat your customer, they will treat your customers the way you treat your customers. And I don't know about you, but if I'm going to make a referral to someone and I'm not confident they will give my customers the same kind of service or communication or follow through that I do, I'm not making that referral because it'll reflect poorly on me. So if they don't trust that you will replicate the way they serve their customers, if their experiences with you is that you don't always follow through and your reliability is in question, that they don't think you have enough knowledge, maybe they don't think you're good enough at what you do, that you're the best option for their customer. So here's the point for you on this. If I'm going to recommend a client to you to make a referral, I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions. And I'm going to say things like, well, how do you typically serve your own customers? And what are some things you do to make them feel special? And what are some of your core values around customer service? And if I was to talk to your customers, why would they say they love you so much? Because if you know that someone may make a referral for you and they're procrastinating or they haven't done it, why? Why do you think that is? Is it that they don't care? Is it that they don't have integrity and they're lying? No, I think there's something, just like a sales prospect, there's an obstacle. something's in their way. It may be they don't trust you. It also may be they don't want to be pushy with their customers or the people that they would make referrals for you to, but there's some kind of emotional obstacle that is standing in the way of them taking the action that you feel like you're owed or they said they were going to take. And if you are in a process, you have to identify what that action may be or what that obstacle may be, the same way you would, again, for a sales prospect. So if they don't ask you the questions about how you serve your customers, you need to tell them so they can have a comfort level. And you need to ask them what they would want you to do to get that comfort level. So the thing about reciprocity, it's really tricky because all the time people have business conversations. They go to networking events, virtual networking events. They're having conversations with people on LinkedIn. They're great conversations. People walk away from the conversations, I feel like, genuinely wanting to help one another. But it doesn't happen in a lot of cases. Why doesn't it? That's what I'm challenging you to think about. And once you've identified what your obstacle is, right, for asking, and what you've identified what you think their obstacle is for taking the action, that's when you've got to address it and do something about it, because it's not going to magically go away. So with that said, let's talk about a channel partner. Now, I did a training several months back on this, and this is actually building channel partners is a big part of the coaching and training I do for small business owners, but I just want to keep it in simple terms today. To me, a channel partner is three things. It's another way to generate leads for warm calls. It's another way to grow revenue, and the biggest thing I love about it, it's a way to avoid cold calling. And a channel partner could be an existing client, but I want you to hear what my ultimate definitions of a channel partner is aside from an existing client. It's a company who sells to or works with the same audience or decision makers you do, but doesn't compete. So think of people who call on the same people you do, but don't compete. It also could be people who do compete, but you offer a piece to their offering that they don't have, or they may offer a piece to your offering you don't have, or both. So you won't compete on the areas that are too much alike, but you could be complementary pieces and as an upsell to each of your respective customers. So that's what a channel partner is. Now, here's the million-dollar question. What can you do to motivate people? Now, you see this on TV all the time. You see this in email blasts. People are offering $100 gift cards. People are finding different ways to motivate you. And what I always explain about this is, you guys are focused on your own business. If I was to tell you right now that I'm going to give you $400 if you make a referral to Mindset Go, I don't think it would move any of you really. Because at the end of the day, whatever time you think you would need to invest to make the referral for Mindset Go is probably not going to be more important than growing your own business. And so the mistake I think people make when they're trying to motivate others is we assume everybody is motivated by money, and we assume a certain amount of money everybody is motivated by. Now, my payroll company yesterday sent me an email, and it said right in the middle of the email, it said, refer such and such, and we'll send you a $100 Visa gift card. And I'm just like, it doesn't do anything for me. So one of the biggest mistakes I think we make in growing our business and networking is we lead with a motivator. Why do we do that? Instead of the payroll company saying, hey, if you make a referral, I'll give you a $100 gift card. Wouldn't it be novel if they said, hey, would you be willing to make a referral? And if so, what could we do for you that would make it worth your time and effort? Why are we asking the question instead of making a statement? A lot of companies will do revenue shares. I do revenue shares. A lot of companies will do revenue shares, but I don't lead with the revenue share. I lead with, when I'm talking to a channel partner, I'll say, well, what can I do to make this worth your time? Is there a certain amount of money? Can I share your posts on LinkedIn? Can I write a testimonial for you? Like, what is it that would make the biggest difference? And you know, one of the answers I get the most is treat my customers like gold. Because if I do make a referral for you, it's a big leap of faith, and I want to make sure they're getting huge value. That's what I hear most. So we are all motivated by money to a point, but when you think of motivating people, here's a couple of things I want you to ask the person who you're hoping makes a referral. Like I said already, the first thing I want you to ask them is, look, I really appreciate the time and energy you're willing to help grow my business, and I'm willing to make that same investment for you. So what can I do for you as a thank you? If you do make a referral that closes as a customer for me, what can I do? What would be meaningful for you? Ask that question. Don't lead with an answer. Ask the question. The second thing I would ask is, hey, if we are going to support one another and make referrals, what expectations do you have in our partnership? Everybody has expectations. Expectations are okay if they're articulated and agreed upon. But without them being articulated and agreed upon, it's not cool to have expectations of people. So ask them what kind of expectations they have, right? And has there been a precedent of doing favors before? Are they used to making referrals? When they make the referrals, ask them, hey, so when you typically make a referral, how does it work? Do you involve me in the process? Do you send an email? Do we jump on a phone call together? Like, how does that typically work? The thing, probably the single biggest piece missing in motivation when it comes to reciprocity and channel partners is the tools. And what I mean is, I already mentioned the whole thing about asking what people want as opposed to telling them what they should want to be motivated. What I'm talking about is when someone makes a referral for me, I have a whole toolbox I give them. I give them a description of who my ideal client is. I give them an email template. I give them a LinkedIn template. If they're calling on the phone, I give them a voice outline of how to talk about my company. And I give them the differentiators of why my company is better than the others. I mean, I give them literally like 5 or 6 things, because the idea is that if you are nice enough to be willing to make a referral and invest your time in my business and on me, you should have to lift a damn finger. So literally, if you're going to email someone as an introduction, here's the email to use with whatever attachments I want you to attach. And all you have to do is write a sentence or two to personalize it in the beginning. If it's a phone call, let's jump on a call, the 3 of us, so you don't have to feel the pressure of remembering how to sell and talk about Mindset Go. But if you're not comfortable with that, I'll give you the talking points. I'll give you the differentiators. And remember something, everybody. If someone's making a referral for you, there's a big difference between someone who's referring you, who's done business with you, and referring you who has not. Because if they've done business with you, that's a much easier referral to make because they can share their experience. But if they haven't, like if one of you called me and was referring a colleague, I would say to you, well, why are you referring them? Well, they're really a nice person. They're really honest, trustworthy. They have a great reputation, whatever. I said, but you haven't done business with them, have you? So it really changes the tenor of how you make that referral if you haven't done business with that person. And that's why I give people the talking points in either scenario so they're not set up to fail. And ultimately, when someone's making a referral for me, I don't want them to be in a position where they're selling Mindset Go. I want them to more sell the value of the conversation. So for instance, poor Josh, I keep using him, he's on the phone, but I love Josh. He's such a great guy and he does such great work. I haven't done business with Josh where he's actually served my company, but I've had multiple interactions and I know how he treats people and I know how he communicates. So if I was to refer someone to Josh, it would go something like this. You know what? This guy, Josh O'Gara, he's a colleague of mine. You need to talk to this guy. He knows so much about benefits and how to save companies money and how to make employees become more engaged. You got to talk to this guy. And the worst case scenario, you spend 15, 30 minutes with him, he may teach you something. He may add value to what you do. Whether you do business or not, it's worth talking to him. So can you see how I shift the conversation from I haven't done business with them, so now I have to sell the worth and value of talking to the person as opposed to doing business with the company directly. So listen, everybody. And then the third thing on motivation I want to point out, because this was a major part of the presentation today, is one of the things I've been trying in the last year that has worked is instead of giving an incentive to the person making the referral, I give the incentive to the person that would be referred. So for instance, if you were going to refer a training or coaching client to me, instead of me giving you $500 or whatever, I will say, hey, here's $500 for you to give to them. Why is that important? Because it really potentially removes the obstacle of your clients or people in your network feeling pushy by selling for you, which is what they're really doing, let's face it. So now you give them a gift to give to that person. It feels like not only are they making a recommendation, but they're giving them a gift at the same time. And that method has worked. So it's a different thought process and it's a different mindset, but it's important. Okay? So 3 takeaways in summary. 1, ask people what matters to them and how they'd be motivated to help you. 2, think about incentivizing the person being referred instead of the referrer. And 3, understand what expectations people have in the partnership and the toolbox that you can give them to make that referral so much easier. Okay, we only have about 5 minutes left, so I'm going to through this. So just a quick thought on this slide. I talk about this all the time. Biggest mistake you make when you have a channel partner or a networking relationship is when you have what I call the referral mindset. And the referral mindset means the only way someone's valuable to you or you're valuable to them is if they can make an instant referral to you. And that is rare that someone can make an instant referral. You have to look at channel partners and clients the same way you would look at a sales prospect who says, I can't do business with you right now, but reach out to me again in 3 to 6 months. What you have to do is identify the channel partners and clients that really champion your cause and that really genuinely want to help you, even if they can't help you today, but you know they would help you if they could and would be open-minded to hearing how they could help you. So these are all different things you could do in addition to making a referral or receiving a referral. This is just a quick thought on instant gratification. So I'm just asking you all to think of 2 things. One is to have a mutual mindset, because reciprocity works at its best when both people are consistently focused and keeping each other on top of mind. This is about quality, not about quantity. If you tell me you have 20 people in your network that may make referrals to you, I'm going to say, well, how many of the 20 have actually made referrals to you? I would focus on finding 5 to 7 people that you can talk with on a consistent and regular basis to explore mutual support, because quantity is not going to get it done. You've got to really spend time with the people that will help you and are committed to helping you, and you're committed to helping them. Last but not least, let's talk about testimonials. So one of the ways you can certainly help people are testimonials and recommendations on LinkedIn. And you can see on this slide, there's a lot of different things you can do. I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss this. It's something you can do. Now, again, if you haven't worked with the person, that's a little different, right? Because you haven't had the experience to share. But if you have, or if you know people that have, maybe you can share their posts on LinkedIn. Maybe you can comment on their posts when you see their post. There's lots of things you can do with testimonials, but and by the way, video testimonials are really the most powerful if you feel comfortable on camera. But these are some things you can do to really help people. And one of the things I will send you today when I send a recording of the webinar is I will send you supplemental ideas of how you can help people and how they can help you besides solely making referrals. Okay, so wrapping up, couple things. So NAFA and Mindset Go are teaming up for 2 additional workshops coming up. one on the 30th, decision making. And that is all about how to train multiple decision makers and your immediate decision maker to sell for you. So if you're talking to someone and they need to go talk to other people, I'm going to give you a process on how you can make your key contact person a salesman to those other people, salesperson. And then on the 22nd, we have the aftermath. This is really how you evaluate your networking efforts. Are you picking the right events, picking the right groups and organizations? Are you really measuring the success and outcomes and habits effectively? And as always, just a reminder, I do have a podcast on how to improve your communication skills with clients, prospects, within your company, family, sports, schools, etc. You can access it on Apple and Spotify, and it's on the radio on CRN 10 to 11 on Thursdays. If you enjoyed this, please share on social media and comment and tag me. I'd really appreciate it. Always very much appreciate that. And otherwise, I'm happy to stay around for a couple of minutes if there's any questions.